And today, it's our privilege to introduce them to you. So right now, we're going to have a video that they're going to utilize as introduction to their time of sharing. And then the next voice you will hear will be that of Elder Wade and Minister Ditzah Wade. So please welcome them as they come on thereafter. Praise the Lord.
Honey?
What?
I can't believe this.
Can't believe what?
I can't believe I've been married to the most amazing, wonderful, beautiful woman for the past 2 years, 6 months, and 3 days. I love you.
I love you too.
I got you these flowers and this tiny teddy bear for no reason at all. Here.
I love them. They're adorable. You're so sweet.
Here's some chocolate. What? What?
What is it, sweetie?
Did you go to the mall yesterday and purchase clothes?
Yes, I did.
You stayed so far under budget. It's amazing. Thank you. What movie are we gonna watch tonight, sweetie? Hopefully one of your favorite romantic comedies.
That sounds wonderful. But I thought instead we could watch sports.
Fine.
Also, I made this steak dinner for you.
That is my favorite thing to eat while watching sports.
Here's your steak knife. Have a great day at work, sweetheart.
Thank you. I will. You're the air that I breathe.
Oh, thank you. You're the best.
You are.
We are.
Love you.
Love you too.
Good morning, everybody. While we're waiting for our little setup here, I just want to tell you, we are still learning. It's been 34 years coming up soon, but we're still learning. And we're hoping, put that in the middle, please, and take this off. But, you know, we did this, and we're doing this journey with God. I do have, thank you. Okay. All right. What you saw on the video clip, how many of us send mixed messages in our marriage? Think about it. You know, that was maybe not an extreme, but certainly it's about trying to juggle two different people into one. And right where we are, we want to kind of talk about the power of love, which worked very nicely with how we opened up the series, because I believe Pastor Paul Miller talked about what's love got to do with it. Well, love has got to do a lot with it. And if it wasn't love, I don't know, hubby. I would say that the way we communicate can determine the health of your marriage. So sending mixed messages could not actually set the right foundation you need for your marriage. In the community of faith, for the power of love in a healthy marriage, it's about love having everything to do with it. It's about love leading out even when your eyes don't see it. It's about love accentuating the intimacy in your marriage. And finally, it's what 1 Peter 4 and 8 says, which says, above all other deeply, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. And don't you agree that we all come with sins in our life? Our partner, our spouse, is not our enemy. And a healthy relationship, we need to remember that.
The power of love says, above all, we love each other deeply because it covers a multitude of sins. That's what 1 Peter 4 and 8 says, the power of love. How many of you believe in the power of love? I'm telling you. I want to read a little illustration to you from one of my favorite authors and preachers, and his name is Tony Evans. And it reads like this. A husband and wife were fussing one day. They were really going at it. So his wife suggested that they write down their complaints on a piece of paper, then show each person exactly how they felt. So it might cut down on the bickering and the fighting. The husband quickly agreed, got the paper, got some pencils, and they both started writing. They both wrote fiercely. The husband would pause and look at his wife and write some more. The wife would pause and look at her husband and write some more. The husband pauses again, looked at his wife, even with an angrier look on his face, and then he would write some more. The wife did the same thing. Then but she put her pencil down, and her husband was still writing. He looked up at her in fury and continued writing. He kept writing. Then he wrote some more. Then he wrote some more. The wife was getting furious because she had covered one side of the page, and her husband was finishing the backside of his paper. And he kept looking at her and coming up with more to write. Every time he looked up, something new would come, and he would write down some more. The wife was in pain and agony. She was clenching her fists, and tears of anger were welling up in her eyes. Finally, her husband said, I'm finished. They exchanged sheets of paper. And as she looked at the other sheet, as soon as she gave him her sheet and she looked at his, she felt terrible. She wanted to take her sheet back. For when she looked at her husband's sheet of paper, in spite of anger and in spite of pain, he had written on every line, I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm ticked off, but I love you. I'm angry, but I love you. I don't want to be here right now, but I love you. When she saw that much love, it was covered in the multitude of sins that had brought up the argument in the first place. When a husband and wife love one another like that, that kind of love can cover a multitude of sins. Amen. How many of you ever been in that position where love conquered everything? Well, in the beginning, God started out like this. God had a purpose for marriage. He just didn't do it arbitrarily. He had something in mind that goes even into now, until everlasting. In Genesis 2nd chapter, 18th verse, and the 21st to the 23rd verse, it reads like this. In the beginning, the Lord said, it is not good for a man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And at that point, then God provided for our needs, and he established something in Genesis 22. Then he came back and he said this. Then the Lord said, then the Lord made a woman from the rib he had taken out of man, and he brought her to man. And finally, there was a response for God's provision to man. And can you imagine what Adam saw? And the man said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of me. Can you imagine being alone? Everybody else had a companion, all the animals, everything. But except Adam, he didn't have anything. But when he saw her, imagine, she said, oh, God, Lord, look at this. She fine. Dana morning. What do I have here? Lord, thank you. I never knew what goodness was, but you gave me something that I can work with. Hallelujah.
And honestly, you know, my husband and I met at a club. Yes, at a club. And but I was there under duress because I was trying to keep my girlfriend from getting into trouble, and I wasn't interested in talking to anybody. But I had made a statement to him, and he thought it was kind of an annoying statement, but he said, gee, she was kind of cute. And he started searching for me, but unbeknownst to him, I had gone upstairs to the private section of the club. And you know, when I hear about Genesis, it really was the case, because when he finally located me, he was like, wow, you have a beautiful smile. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'd like to take a picture of you. You know, I do a lot of photography. I'm like, oh, here we go again. He's like, no, seriously. And, you know, we started engaging. A healthy relationship is about engaging with one another, you know, and start having that conversation. When someone pricks your ear, all of a sudden, you're kind of like, your heart and your mind, you're like, ooh, okay. And we started, it just kind of morphed. I mean, we became friends. We actually shared things. And that sharing ultimately culminated in us getting married. But it's about marriage and oneness when we start talking about healthy relationship. What God has given us is a divine blueprint, and that divine blueprint comes with hope, direction, and a purpose for marriage. None of us come into marriage knowing exactly how it is. Even if you think if you're living, cohabitating, shacking up, whatever you want to say, let me tell you something. When you go into a covenant relationship, that changes too. We have told many couples that we know who have lived together, and they're like, okay, you know, they feel as if, well, we'll go ahead and we'll get married, and but we're already doing it. No, you're not doing it. You're not doing it if God's not in it. And let me tell you, once God gets in it, he makes it a confusing mess. Because you're like, wow, what happened?
Can I tell you my part?
Go ahead.
We supposed to been cutting this. We looking at the clock. But forget the clock, honey. You know, my mom told me that one day when God was going to save me, and he was going to give me a God-honored marriage. And I didn't know it when I met her, because I told her it wasn't love at first sight. It was definitely lust. I'm telling you. And I'm telling the truth. And when we started out in like a God-honored relationship, because it was like, we started dating, and I said, well, can you show me some affirmation? Like, can a brother get a hug? Nope. Can a brother get a kiss? No.
Nope.
Well, I used to ask about anything else. So this went on for about a year. And so I got to the point that I had stopped asking for anything. And we became close friends. And I didn't realize that when we started doing this message, that God was working things out then. I wasn't even saved. I hadn't given my life to Christ yet. So during that period of time, that year, we became friends. And I'm like, wow, I really, 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 really like her a lot. So that little confusion she had in the beginning, she had another boyfriend. But he was getting the same treatment I was, but they were still connected in some way. And we met at a famous spot in Boston one time, the Jamaica Pond. And
It's a good place to
and
walk.
I said, you know, we've been dating and doing this thing for a year and seeing each other. Like I know you still talking to him, and you haven't made any commitment to me, but make a decision. So the three of us are together at Jamaica Pond. We were walking around the pond, and he looking at me with tough eyes. I'm looking at him with tough eyes. I said, brother, I'm ready to go, if that need be. So we get around. After we walked around one time, I said, okay, well, what is it going to be? Is it going to be him or me?
Yep.
And the three of us are standing there. And she looked at him, and she looked at me. She looked at him, she looked at me. And she said, I pick you. And it was me. And I said, praise the Lord. So the guy's last name was Murphy. And I said, Murphy's Law, you got to go.
Yeah.
It's over with. So the second year, of course, we broke the rule of intimacy. But it got to a point where communication breakdown came in, and we kind of broke up for like a few months. And I said, God, I know this was the one. How am I going to get it back? During that time, there wasn't no cell phones. We only had beepers, and we only had
He had a beeper. I didn't have
answering machines. Call, no answer, no return, no nothing. So 2 or 3 months go by. I said, I done blew this. I said, I really thought this was something. And out of the blue, she calls me up. She said, look, I've been thinking for the last couple of months. I think we can work this out. I kind of like love you a little bit. And I said, Lord have mercy.
See, I
That's
don't
what I'm
remember
talking about.
this.
Hold it. I'm telling you now. Wait a minute. Let me
Okay,
finish.
all right,
I'll be finished in 1 minute.
Okay.
So
You might have to minister to us up here.
Remember when you said, honey, I've been thinking about this. I'm going home to Cincinnati to visit my
Oh, I
parents.
remember that I was going home.
Oh, you want to come with me? I said, sure. I'll pay the airfare and everything. So we go to Cincinnati, and I grew up in a Christian home. My mother was a missionary. She was an evangelist preacher, and her father was a preacher. When I got there and I met them, I said, wow, this reminded me so much of home. I said, they're the salt of the earth. I said, now this is the type of family I need to be in. This is what I want to be in. So when I got back, unbeknownst to her, I didn't tell her this. God was working on me some kind of tough. I said, if this going to work out, I'm going to need God in my life, because I can't do it by myself, because I know I'm going to mess up. So one night I told her, I was like, I'm going to stop at this church. And she was like, stop at this church for what? I called home and said, Mom, I'm going to give my life to Christ. She said, boy, you've been in church all your life. Go ahead. You know what to do. So I went and gave my life to Christ that night. I came back the next day. I said, honey, can we talk? And she said, yeah. I said, I gave my life to Christ last night, and what I'm about to tell you, I always knew was a sin what we've been doing. I said, but now I'm convicted that I can't do it no more. I said, we can't sleep together no more. And she went, OFF.
Yeah, I didn't understand where he was coming from. I didn't know what kind of church he was going to, because he came out with that, and he spoke about how the Spirit had fallen upon him, and he spoke in tongues, and I was like, what's that? And I mean, it was, I'm like, well, you want to break up with me. And I just thought he wanted to break up with me.
Well, you know what? You ever heard from the last Super Bowl, I think Tom Brady said this. You win the Super Bowl, we gonna honor you, your family's family, everybody you know. And I said, well, you know, I've been told when we make a decision like this, we not only honor God, but I'm honoring you, I'm honoring me, I'm honoring my parents, and I'm honoring your parents for making a decision like this. And I said, if you just bear with me a little while longer, you'll understand. I said, I'm not trying to push you away, I'm trying to draw you in. And this is from a new convert, but the Spirit of God was like working with me, and stuff was just coming out of my mouth that usually wouldn't come out. But when God comes in your life, when he saves you, you transform right then. And it's something you want to do. I said, believe me, my flesh want to do it real bad. But my spirit is telling me, you can't do it.
So we made a commitment, and this is our history. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. We got married October 15th, 1983. So that'll be almost 34 years coming this October. He asked me in April, we got married in October. And really, for the sake of, the actual wedding, it didn't take all of that, because it seems that what God puts together, he really brought a village, because a village came together, and we basically got married under so many blessings and giftings that October was the sweetest day of the year. It was Hallmark's day, sweetest day of the year. I remember that. And I remember thinking, wow, my life is about to change. I had my own apartment. He had his own apartment. I remember walking down the hallway and looking and saying, this is the last time I'm walking down the hallway as a single woman. The longevity of our marriage was our willingness to do two things: to develop a love language for one another and with one another, and to fight for our marriage and not in the marriage. Divorce could never be a word that's offered in our marriage. Now, you will have arguments, trust me. You will have disagreements. You will be sometimes just like, in Tony Evans's illustration, you could be really ticked off and mad. But you know what? Love has got to undergird it. And we also had a legacy that both our parents were still married and committed to their marriage.
Before my pops died, they had been married 61 years. And before my wife's mom died, they had been married for 47 years. And I think that kind of like molded us together, because we had a long history from our families of relationship. But when we came into our relationship, she had experienced something that I had never experienced. By her father being a minister, and he counseled people. So my dad was from old school. Children were seen and not heard. You didn't have open discussions at the table. Her family was free speaking, freewheeling, free discussion, free everything. So I not only mimicked myself, I didn't try to be like him, but it was in me to be like my father, and he was kind of laid back and quiet. When he said something, it was impactful, but that wasn't all the time that often. She was used to talking all the time. I said, why does this woman talk so much? But the thing about it, I never knew. It's amazing that you seek after what you see or you're brought up with. And my mother and her are just alike, and I never knew that. My father and I are just alike. But she said, brother, we can't have this. You got to talk to me. So we developed a love relationship and a communication relationship that it took time. I used to get beat down, but she taught me how to relate with her and to be open with her. Like she said, we've had spats, of course, but I've always taken the high road. And I tell all you young married people and stuff, brothers, most of the time, they're right. Give yourselves a hand.
Okay, that was weak, ladies.
No, but God built women different than men. We only look straight ahead. They got 360 vision. They do something totally different from us. And I began to find that out. So Whenever an argument, I take the high road. Say, honey, forgive me. I was wrong, regardless if I feel like I was right or not, because I want peace. I've never seen my father in 61 years sleep in another room except the room that was designed by God for them. So I asked my brother at one point in our life, I said, Nathaniel, you ever heard mom and dad argue? He said, sometimes in the middle of the night they have a spirited discussion, but it was never in front of us.
Spirited discussion.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I said, Dad, have you ever got mad at mom? Because they were always loving. You know, I was saying, this is impossible that somebody got a relationship like that, but they were so deeply in love with one another. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's the mutual respect that you have to develop in your marriage for one another. That's the Philippians 2, 3, and 4, where you have that mutual respect for one another. That your spouse is not your enemy. All right? Your spouse is not your enemy. Even in a heated argument or dispute, you got to remember, you don't go after the flesh that's supposed to be your flesh, bone of my bone, all right? That's not what the marriage oneness is about. It is fighting fair, though, okay? In Proverbs 15:4, it says, the soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Have you ever said something to your spouse and you realize what that meant? It was worse than what you ever intended it to mean? Oh my God. I mean, you can't even sleep. It's just all in your head. You feel so remorse. And you know what? It's all right to go to your spouse and say, I'm sorry. We don't say enough of that.
Well, in Philippians 2, 3, and 4, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. And that preferred other is your other half. So communication is so very important. A healthy marriage is about creating teamwork together. That comes from communication.
I was going to just say that the style of communication, is it one that you reject, one that you tolerate, or one that you celebrate? I mean, for us, we've had a combination of all three. I mean, 34 years, we've seen a lot of landscapes. And we're going to continue to see a lot of landscapes, except that with each landscape, you should learn something. You should be able to come out of it having learned something. And I will tell you that rejecting a spouse leads to that isolation. It leads to a selfishness. And that's one of the major barriers to not having a healthy life, is when you end up becoming very isolated in your marriage. It's horrible to live as a single person in a married relationship. It's horrible.
Something Pastor Rob said, not this past Sunday before last, is that when you're pushed away and your spouse tells you no, and it's a hard feeling, like any of you married know what it is when you said, I got this thing with her. I say, honey, this one's got to be for the Gipper. And she'll give in, but sometimes it's like, ain't happening, brother. But Pastor Rob said the Spirit of God has spoken to him afterwards. And he said, God said to him, that's how I feel when I'm rejected. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, that's deep. Mm-hmm. When we feel rejected, it's the worst feeling in the world. Mm-hmm. And I said, God said that to you, man. Like, when I'm rejected, I feel the same way. So that amended my whole thought process. I said, hey, look, I got to be amenable to my wife as much as possible. I try to go overboard in praising her and doing stuff for her.
God means to bless the marriage bond. And so, yes, there will be sex and intimacy in the marriage bed. But it should only be with the mate, your husband or your wife, not any community, not anything outside of your marriage. Let's be very clear about that. When you get married, you have cut off any of those former relationships, and you have now joined to the man or to the woman that you have given vows to. And you have to remember that. In 1 Corinthians 7:3, it says, the husband shall fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. But further down in verse 5, it says, do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come back together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Because God knows that we can get a little, quirky. All right? But there's something that happened in our marriage that we needed an agreement.
I know there's a couple people in the church that are pregnant now, but my wife was pregnant with our first child. And I had this woman called Mother Peterson. She was my spiritual mother. It seemed like everything she told me, she said, God spoke to me and told me to tell you this, Brother Wade. I said, okay, Mother. So my wife was pregnant, and, she comes. She said, Brother Wade, can you come over to my house? Now, she was an old lady. She was in her 80s. She said, can you come over to my house and talk to me? I said, yes, ma'am. I'll come over. She came over, and she said, let's have prayer. We had prayer and stuff, and she said, well, there's no use in me beating around the bush. Let me tell you what the Lord told me. And I'm like, okay, what'd he tell you? He said, the Lord said that you're not going to be able to come together with your wife for the entire pregnancy. I said, what you mean? She said, you understand what I mean? I said, no, make it plain to me, like, what are you saying? She said, the Lord said you're not going to be able to come together with your wife the entire pregnancy. And I said, you mean? She said, yes, I mean. I said, oh, my God. And I said, this can't be real. So I said, Mother, I appreciate you. I love you to death. So I go home and how the Lord confirm stuff. All of a sudden I go home, my wife is deathly ill. Deathly ill. The first, you said you're supposed to have morning sickness the first trimester? She had morning sickness for 2 trimesters and a half. I mean, hypnotist couldn't hypnotize her.
Yep, they tried it.
Prayer didn't work. She was sick from morning, noon, and night. And I couldn't even look at her without her feeling like she had to vomit. And I said, and the Lord said, it's not you. Just prevail. Stay in prayer. And Pastor Ross said, God made men in a different way that we are like, yeah, you need it. Some of us got to have it. I'm like saying, gee, really, honey? So this goes on, and then she gets, and I do this and have the baby. 2 months later, I said, honey, don't you think it's time that, I'm like, can we do something here? I don't know, this sickness just was like,
But
hold it. No, I got to do one more thing to say. So this happened 2 times. Second pregnancy, Mother Peter said, Brother Wade, can you come over to my house, please? I need to talk to you. I said, what, Mother Peterson? What? She said, the Lord told me to tell you something. I said, oh, God, no, not it. I said, it can't be the same thing. Can't be the same thing. Lord told me to tell you again that you're not going to be able to come together with your wife the entire pregnancy. And my head dropped. I said, Lord, I don't know how much more I can take of this. And, you know, being separate from your wife all that time is just like rough. I mean, like really tough. And I'm trying to tell her, honey, you are beautiful. Like, look at you. And she said, look at me. She said, I'm not beautiful. And it was just something that you have to deal with in your marriage. And in the aftermath, looking at it in the rearview mirror, I don't know how I got through it. But by the grace of God, I did.
yes. And for me, just to know that I had a husband that it took the pressure off of me, because that was a time of consent where we're in agreement. We were able to, I see it. Okay. we were able to come together for a period of time. But, you know, ladies, it's a period of time. It doesn't mean that it's the end of time. You have to recognize and honor your marriage. So, in honoring the house and the time that we have here with you, we're going to tell you to come back for part 2 on Tuesday, all right? And honestly, part 2 is a continuation, but it's also for those of you who are struggling and saying, but that's not how my marriage is. All right? But let me tell you, but God. All right? So that's all I'm going to say. And before we close out, I do want to just make this plug that if anybody is feeling in an unsafe relationship, an unhealthy relationship, we do have some resources out by the Welcome Center, because no one, you know, this is about healthy relationships, healthy marriages, and no one should ever feel that way, that you are in an unsafe relationship. Get help. Seek help. Please seek help. We're talking about a covenant, healthy relationship. But if you are not in that, get the help so that God can get you towards the relationship that you so deserve. Because God does love each and every one of us, even with the sins that we have broken, even with the brokenness that we enter. Because let me tell you, it takes 2 to become 1, but it takes God to help make that happen. Amen?
Thank you for your ears. God bless you all.
Can we just praise the Lord for the Wades?